Hi everybody. Just wanted to come up here and give a little message. I know I've been away. I have been taking some time to recuperate, to regain strength and energy. These have been days where I have been receiving a lot of information, a lot of downloads, and I have been trying to just download the information the best that I can. And I think it's a period always before the Lionsgate where we tend to have this sort of split between worlds, especially if you are already on the spiritual path. For many who are not, it is actually a great opportunity to wake up. So sometimes things happen in people's lives that we come to know in this time, and some pivotal events have been happening already and will continue to happen as this new wave of consciousness grounds into earth. And I'm just saying wave and I start to feel it. I start to feel like very tired, but anyway, so what I wanted to say is that I know that many of you have been feeling depleted, tired, like going back. Perhaps even those of you who are awake, who have been on the spiritual path, maybe feeling like you're going backwards, or suddenly things that you thought that you had transcended come back around. And this is normal in a way. I just wanted to give you this message so that you're not that hard on yourself if you're experiencing any of these things, and to take it as an opportunity to rest, to ground yourself, but also to become aware of what you are experiencing and who is observing your experience. You know, when we talk about the mind and programming, we all kind of know that we mentally we are running certain programs, which are belief systems, ways of thinking, ways of acting, rules, everything that we sort of absorb as we come into this earthly plane and growing up. But all of these programs, they run on the mind, which means that there is something else about you that is not your mind, that is able to actually observe these programs, that is able to see and recognize, oh, I have this belief system. Like, the more we spend time in silence, the more we spend time becoming the observer and observing our life, our thoughts, without just, impulsively going into everything in our lives or running on autopilot. If we make that exercise of asking ourselves, okay, I'm feeling this, I am thinking this, and where is that coming from? Like, this is in my mind, but I can observe what I'm thinking. So who is observing what I'm thinking? Who is analyzing what I'm feeling? And the who is always, for me, the soul or divinity or your divine consciousness, which is far greater and is connected to infinity, because it is infinite. It is a part of you that is not going to die. Like, if you believe in reincarnation, or if you have read the Buddhist teachings, for example, we actually come into this body, which is like the vehicle that we use in this density, and the body functions in this way, with the mind, with the emotions, and with all sorts of different systems that are amazingly beautiful and complex and very simple at the same time. But the the thing that is wearing the body, the thing that is expressing through, is your soul, right? Is divine consciousness. And when we die, that divine consciousness goes back to where it was, or it doesn't cease to exist. It just transforms. It just takes on another form, right? Depending on your path, depending on many things. But the point is that your soul is eternal, and there is information that is gathered by your soul on so many levels, in so many different timelines. And all of that is just pure energetic information. So one of the things that I teach all the time is to have your mind work for you, but to always tap into your divinity, into your soul, when you need answers, when you need higher guidance, when you need knowledge, even to manifest, even to create your life. Like, the more time you spend in silence, in meditation, that's why we meditate, right? For people who are like, why? Like, these crazy people, they sit down and they just stare at nothing, or stare at a candle or whatever. But what we're doing is we're actually getting control of the mind, okay? So, or not even getting control, we're actually becoming independent, becoming free of the limitations of the mind, of the impositions of the mind, of the requirements of the mind. So we're learning every time that we meditate to identify with our divine consciousness, with pure consciousness, rather than identifying with the mind. And what that does is that we start to perceive, slowly but surely, we start to build this space of reflection, this space of recognition. And we start to become aware of who and what we are, and who and what we are not. And most of the time, the first step that we recognize is that we are not the mind, that I am not my thoughts. I can think my thoughts, I can think these thoughts, I can have these programs, but I am not the thoughts. And that is the first step into analyzing and reflecting back to you. Okay, if I'm not my thoughts, if I am not my emotions, if I'm not my physical body, then who am I? And that's what meditation brings you to. Meditation is just the vehicle. It's just, the means and the, let's say, like the transportation that you take into your own adventure and discovery of yourself, of who you are. Not what your name is, not what you do, not who your family is, not where you come from, where you were born this lifetime or other lifetimes. All of that is part of what we receive with the body, with the physicality. But who you truly are beyond that, beyond any limitation, beyond your mind, beyond your feelings. Like when you stare in the mirror, you look at yourself in the eyes, who is there? And this is an exercise that I loved to do when I was little and growing up, still well into my adolescence. I would just stare at my eyes and ask myself, who are you? What are you doing here? And when I stared long enough, I could see infinity in my own eyes. And I didn't do it because I learned this somewhere. It was just like a natural inquiry of my being that was amazed about, being here, having this body, but questioning, going deeper and saying, but who are you really? beyond this body? Who is inside back at me? You can do this exercise and see what you find. Let me know. But so what I have found is that many times people don't see it as a fun exercise to do, or actually when, people start to know that, or to notice that they are not who they always thought they were, especially if their awakening comes later in their life, there is this big fear that may arise, or that sometimes arises of, well, it's part of the ego, experiencing the ego death, or parts of the ego dying, which is our attachment to our identity, our attachment to our stuff, our attachment to our things, to who we are, to our titles, to, the image, the whole description of who we are, all the makeup of who we are. And if there is an over-identification to any of these things, or if the being is using any of these things to feel safe, comfortable, rewarded, even alive, any of these things, then the fear of losing them, or the idea of that not being part of them, becomes very scary. And so many people, when they come to that stage, they may not want to continue on the spiritual path, may not want to continue to go deeper inside. It's like we come into this, when you see these adventure movies, I don't know if you saw the movies of Indiana Jones, but there's always like this first threshold that you have to move beyond. There's always like this first test. And then when you go inside the cave or the pyramid or whatever, then there's another test. And the closer you get to the jewel, or to the treasure, or to whatever we're looking for, the harder the tests become, right? And the hardest test is when you are actually there, when you can actually see and almost grasp the jewel. So if we see it as a metaphor, the jewel would be your awakening, your consciousness, or even your enlightenment. And many people say enlightenment, well, I don't know if many people, but at least Chogyam Trungpa says enlightenment is the ultimate, or the final disappointment of the ego. And this very simple phrase is very, very deep, because it explains a lot of the awakening journey, a lot of the spiritual path, a lot of, and it's not even, when I say spiritual path, I don't want people who are not on the spiritual path to feel like outside or disconnected, because we are all in a spiritual path, whether we are conscious of it or not. So when I say the spiritual path, is more like when I'm referring to people who are already consciously, willfully in the spiritual path, and they already have the knowledge that they are walking that path. Because as divine beings, as spiritual beings, we're all in a spiritual path, right? So it's just a matter of that consciousness that allows us to go deeper. When that light goes on, when we say, okay, this person is awakening, or I'm awakening, what are we awakening of? We're awakening from the dream. We're awakening from Māyā. We're awakening from all the illusions of the 3D reality. We are waking up from the veils. So that is why people who are on a spiritual path, who practice meditation, that's why they develop their spiritual gifts. That's why we develop clairvoyance or clairsentience, or we receive messages, or we channel, or we start to communicate on a regular basis with the other side, with the other world. But the truth is that the other world has always been here, and it's always here. And your spiritual potential, your divinity, is always within you, no matter how awake you are or not. The difficult thing is when you awaken. Well, first of all, sometimes it's to awaken, but that's, divine timing, and that is something that happens when you're ready, like everything. You are born when you're ready, you die when you're ready. Everything happens when it's meant to happen. But when we awaken, like in everything in life, we always have a choice. So there are many times when I see people who are already a little bit into the path, and because of all these things that happen, because of the ego death, because of the it's kind of like a rebirth, but before the rebirth there needs to be a death. So it's a death of beliefs, it's a death of personality, it's a death of attachments, it's a death of many things. And for some people this feels like a sacrifice, for other people this feels like a joy. But no matter where you fall into, like how you're living your journey, there is a profound revelation that says there's nothing outside of you. Everything is inside of you. And at the same time, there is another profound revelation, which is I am everything, and at the same time, I'm nothing. When we meditate, we become very comfortable with being nothing, with doing nothing, with feeling nothing, with thinking nothing, with just being in that nothingness, in that space. And there are people who live their whole lives running away from that space, running away from the emptiness, from the loneliness. And basically it's like running away from themselves, perhaps running away from their fears, running away from their thoughts. But anytime that we're running away, we are being either seduced or chased by Māyā. Māyā meaning the 3D reality, the systems that are in place, the illusion of the 3D reality, the makeup. So they were giving me this image. Didn't know if to say it out loud, but when you're in a fair and there are, or like an amusement park, and there are like clowns and things like that. They were showing me like a crowd running away from the clowns, or like little children running away from the clowns. But if they knew that they weren't actually clowns, that they were actually human beings beyond their, their makeup, they maybe wouldn't run away. So this is a metaphor to again explain how we sometimes run away from the stories that Māyā presents to us, the fears. And many times, until we get to the point where we actually stand and face that, when we actually get so tired of running, and we actually are able to stand and to face our fears, to face our thoughts, to face our feelings, to face whatever is presenting. Just that act of standing, which is standing in your power, standing in your truth, standing in your divinity, even if you have no idea what that is, that alone it's kind of like stopping that wave of fear, obsession, anxiety, stress, these like being in that like frantic wheel. And when we're actually able to face ourselves, and more if we're able to face ourselves with truth, or just with allowance, if we're able to bring that space into that frenetic state, everything stops. We may be just stopping one part of the whole, the whole world of Māyā, but even that action is so powerful that it allows everything else to slow down as well. Of course, the more we do it, the more this effect happens. And so that is why many people, when they start meditating or having a spiritual practice, they start changing the way they relate to everything, to their partners, to their work, to their own bodies, to so many things. Because we're actually able to disengage from the negative tendencies, from the obsession, from the false truth, from everything that is false and everything that is artificial. We're able to disengage from it. Even if we're not really able in the beginning to consciously recognize it, our soul guides us to do this. So when we're not engaged in that, it's like we're putting down a suit that was so heavy that we had been carrying with all these kinds of beliefs and stuff. And we're able to actually be naked, be who we are, feel our own skin, see ourselves for the first time as the light, as who we are. And when this happens, this recognition, it is so profound. It is so peaceful. It's similar to the feeling of when you see a little puppy, or when you see a newborn baby. That's the feeling that you get when you see yourself for the first time. And that starts to melt all of these layers that we have put on ourselves. So for now, because I have to go, I will leave you with that message, and just be mindful in these days that everything is trying to distract you from the path. Māyā is always there. And sometimes we don't have an option but to be there, to engage with certain things. But especially in these moments that are so sacred, in these transitions that we're going through, I would recommend to try to not be in that wheel. Try to get off the wheel. If it's the wheel of social media, if it's the wheel of, looking at watching series, or anything that is distracting you from getting to know yourself, from being with yourself, anything. And I know it's not easy for many, but especially if you're on the path, especially if you're a teacher, a guide or something, try to have that space between you and all of the distractions. Try to have that space where you can be alone, where you can be by yourself, where you can face your fears, where you can face Māyā, where you can stop it, where you can say, no, you're not going into my head. For those of you who struggle with your body image, with feeling worthy, with feeling like you're enough, just say stop. You don't have to be consuming everything that is given. You don't have to be part of the belief systems that are coming from places that are not for your highest good. if you feel that anything of the content of the things that you do, of what you allow into your world, know that you have the divine authority to allow things in or to push them out, and to say, no, this is enough. You always have that choice. So I would say, choose yourself. Choose your light, choose your divinity, choose getting to know who you truly are, beyond all the masks, beyond all the fears, beyond all the armors. There's so much to discover there. It's so beautiful. I can't even tell you. And that's how I see you. So I send you so much love. So much. And I will see you very soon.